If you want to improve your hip internal rotation, then there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind that you may not have considered. See, everyone only has so much active internal rotation range of motion. At some point, and it is usually much earlier than someone thinks, they're going to have to compensate to create more room for internal rotation of the femur sliding back within the hip. And oftentimes what this looks like, especially when people are doing something like your classic 90-90 stretch, is they're going to extend their back and push their pelvis forward. This is going to mimic internal rotation, but it is not genuinely the femur moving back within the hip socket. It's just our low back pushing our pelvis forward as a whole unit. Now, when we move into genuine internal rotation, usually what we see is, and I'm going to exaggerate the pelvic movement just to be very clear, is nutation of the sacrum, meaning that this sacrum bone right here is going to tip forward like that, and that is going to cause a relative tipping back and rotating in of the innominate bones like that. So you're going to see what we call sacral nutation and innominate bone extension, adduction, and internal rotation. This will create more room for my femurs to be able to slide back within the hip socket. We access the most amount of hip internal rotation and sacral nutation when we are in 90 degrees of hip flexion, meaning that we have pretty much a right angle with our thigh and our hip. But some people don't even have the hip internal rotation to even get into 90 degrees of hip flexion genuinely. And that can be a concern if you're going to try to work within that range. If we want to create more room for genuine internal rotation of these innominate bones and also nutation of the sacrum, we can lay on our side in this position and place a foam roller underneath the ilium or top of the pelvis bone right here, and also a kettlebell or something that has some degree of weight to it. Generally around 30 pounds to 40 pounds is a good place to start if you're using a kettlebell, but you can use more if it's comfortable. Now, that is going to create compression of your hip. As that kettlebell presses down on the top of this innominate bone like that, it is going to push that innominate bone into internal rotation. What we're going to do is grab a foam roller, or a yoga block could also work. We'll demo that in a second. But we also need a kettlebell, and the kettlebell shouldn't be too heavy. About 20 to 35-ish pounds is usually going to be ideal here. We're going to slide the foam roller underneath the top of the ilium bone. So Trevor, if you could palpate that really quick and show them where that is. It's really just the bone at the very top of your pelvis on the side there. You're going to place the foam roller up against that. And then you're going to lay across it. And it could help to have someone help you out here, or you could do it yourself. But Trevor is going to put this thing right at the top of his ilium on the top side. And it should be in a comfortable position, but it's not going to be the most comfortable thing ever on that top side leg. You want to make sure that your knees are stacked in this position too. There's a tendency for people to roll that top knee back, but you want to just hang out right there, and make sure your shoulders are also stacked on top of each other. You can support your head with your hand. I find it's more comfortable personally, but do whatever helps you out. You can maybe put a pillow underneath your head, but ideally, you wanna make sure that your hips, knees, and shoulders are stacked, and you're gonna feel some pressure, obviously, into that downside ilium right there. And all you're gonna do is just sit here, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, for 1 to several minutes, depending on what's ideal for you. If you don't have a foam roller, a yoga block can also be used. So Trevor will just take it, put it that way, kind of lengthwise, and then he's just gonna lay over it. And then he would just take that kettlebell and put it in the same exact spot, making sure his knees, shoulders, and also hips are stacked. You could alternatively just have someone like your partner sit on that hip bone and just hang out. We can now work on actually getting the femur slide back within the hip socket more effectively. I'm a big fan of rolling variations with a foam roller that will help us gently start to be able to push the femur into internal rotation. So what we're gonna do on this first variation is simply just lie on our side, having a 90-degree bend at both our knees and our hips. That's going to put us in a more internally rotated position just to start. Now this needs to be as chill as possible, so support your head like you're taking a nap, and then the other shoulder's just hanging out. It's not dumped forward, it's just in line with the hip right there. And then all you're gonna do is very gently exhale through your mouth as you bring that top knee forward. But you're only gonna go to the point where you start to feel like your low back is about to move. Don't go to the point where it actually moves. Stop at that point and then come back very gently as you inhale through your nose. Exhale, go further, and then inhale, come back. Super chill, that's all it is. It should be all hip movement pretty much. Now, as a regression, if this is too much hip flexion, you can bring your knees down a little bit lower, and you can do it in this position right here. Same thing applies though, just make sure your low back isn't moving. The other thing you can do is get in this position and start to roll your femur, and that's going to push it back within the hip socket as you roll down, because if you apply pressure right here, that's going to push the femur in. To set up for this, we want to be in a pretty straight leg position on the leg that we're going to roll, which is the down leg. And this leg is completely relaxed. We're gonna bring this leg over the top. Again, it's just chilling there. It's hanging out, not much muscle tension at all. And we need to place the foam roller where our trochanter is, which is the top of our femur. That bone right here on the side of your hip, the top of it right here, should be on the foam roller. And again, you're completely relaxed. Now we need to roll about 1 inch every 2 seconds. Really, really slow, way slower than most people actually foam roll. Because in order to change the shape of the bone in terms of how it sits in the hip socket, we need to go really, really slow, because bones take a lot of time and they're much slower to change than muscle tissue. So we want to go incredibly slow here. And we're just rolling about 2 to 3 inches below the head of that trochanter, and then rolling back up to it very, very slowly. And then that's all we're really gonna do. We're gonna breathe in through our nose, out through our mouth, staying really relaxed. This leg stays relaxed, this leg stays pretty relaxed. We're just gently supporting our body weight with that down arm right there, and just chilling, staying relaxed, and just put on some TV and hang out. Now, internal rotation is really important, but we can't forget about hip external rotation, and also how the position of our rib cage and trunk can influence our pelvis. For example, if I'm dumped really forward here, then that is going to bring my pelvis usually forward with it. And that's going to put me in that anterior pelvic tilt position. And that means a lot of the problem is coming from here. But until we address that, we're not going to see the success we're looking for. That's why I recommend you check out my beginner body restoration program and also other content on my YouTube channel. I'll link it down below. For more of an upright exercise that's going to dynamically take you in and out of internal rotation range of motion, this is my favorite. What we're going to do to start here is get the setup right, because it's key for the success of this exercise. We're going to get in a very small staggered stance, meaning that our toes in the back are going to be in line with the heel of the front foot, or the foot we're going to be working on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bend our knees just a little bit. And Trevor's going to get tall within his posture. And then he's going to get a nice stack of his ribs over his pelvis. So the way that he's going to do that is staying tall, exhale through his mouth. He's going to feel his rib cage come down. That doesn't mean he slouches. It means he just feels those ribs come down, and that's going to make sure that his head and rib cage and pelvis are aligned. Okay, we're going to take the opposite hand, the right hand, and we're going to place it in the hip crease of that stance leg, the left leg. Then we're going to take the left hand and place it on the glute, the butt cheek of the back leg. This is going to give us a nice reference to be able to hinge properly into. Now, we're going to keep his head all the way down to his pelvis in alignment. So he's going to hinge by pushing his hips back and lowering his chest to the floor, staying centered around that hip. And he's gonna go as low as he can go without feeling any weird junk within his hip, and keeping all this aligned and moving as one unit. So if that's as low as Trevor can go, at the bottom there, he should feel a little stretch in the back of his glute there. And he should also feel like his zipper is slightly facing that big toe right there. Now, he's going to come up by pushing those foot contacts, that inner heel and first metatarsal head, into the ground, and then just raising as one unit, keeping a slight bend in that knee. If he does that right, he's going to feel a ton of glute work on that stance leg. And now he'll go down again, making sure that he's keeping all this together as he goes down. He's going to make sure he's looking maybe about 5 to 7 feet in front of him the whole time to make sure that his gaze and head are in the right position, to the lowest position he can go, pushing through his foot to come up, keeping a slight bend in that knee, and he's got the glute going. From a back view, it's important to understand what the hip is doing in relationship to the knee. So Trevor will get in the start position, and as he goes down, notice how his hip is going ever so slightly outside the knee with the zipper facing that stance leg foot. Now what we don't want to do is have the hip outside like that. We want it to be pushed off very slightly to the side, and we'll know we're doing that effectively if the stance leg has that zipper facing it, and also as we go down we feel a stretch in the back of our glute. That means we're doing a great job. And also as Trevor comes up and he pushes through the ground and the earth, that glute will turn on a lot, and that means we're doing it right. Something that may help you a ton is to use a reference, an external reference, to make sure that your knee stays in the right place. And one way you can do this is get a foam roller and put it up against the wall. We're using the plow box to emulate a wall, but this will help you maintain a slight knee bend and allowing that knee to stay forward as Trevor goes down. So Trevor can demo that. He's going to hinge down, keeping pressure into that roller, and he's gonna feel a stretch in the back of the glute, push through those foot contacts to come up. And what's cool is that if that roller falls or he loses pressure on that roller and it moves around, that means his knee's not staying forward, because we want to extend and stand up, keeping a little bit of that knee bend the entire time. For maximal benefit, I would recommend doing these exercises twice a day for 2 sets each, usually going in the order of first, that kettlebell smash. Secondly, either the 90-90 half rolling on your side or the other one, whichever one works better for you. And also the kickstand hinge, I would recommend 2 sets of about 10 to 12 reps.